This is Martin Giles of the Guildford Dragon News, and I'm with Julie McShane, who is the council leader at Guildford Borough Council and also leader of the Lib Dem group there, who are in charge of the administration. This is the final in a series of interviews with all the party leaders at Guildford Borough Council. Councillor McShane, thank you very much for giving time for this interview. So it's been 18 months now since the Borough Council election, and you've had plenty of time to analyse that result. What are your conclusions?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to be interviewed, Martin. It's good to be here. I think looking back at the elections in May 2023, which seems like a very long time ago, I think at the time, the Liberal Democrats ran a very positive campaign. And I think that, on the doorsteps we were having lots of conversations with people who were very, very disillusioned and some disgusted with the then Conservative government. And obviously I think that plays out in local elections as well. And I was delighted when, obviously at the count we discovered that we'd actually been elected with 25 seats and were able to take control of the council.
Why do you think R4GV didn't do better?
I'm not really sure, to be honest. I mean, obviously we'd been in a coalition with them, and they were a new party that came into power very quickly. I know that they would say that there were extenuating circumstances that played into the election, but I think for us, we found on the doorsteps that they weren't even being mentioned.
Right. Do you think that the controversy over the North Street development played a part?
I'm not sure, to be honest. And as I said, on doorsteps, they just weren't being mentioned. So.
Okay. Now, the other party leaders have had an opportunity in these interviews to comment on your performance. What do you think of theirs?
Wow, that's a question. I think overall, they have been given lots of opportunities throughout the last 18 months that we've been leading the council to be involved in dealing with some of the issues that we've had over that time, and I'm really pleased to say that mostly they have been part of helping to resolve some of those issues and put forward their views about how we're handling things. Obviously there was a very for me, a very unpleasant situation last year where I had to face a vote of no confidence, only a few short months after everybody in the chamber had elected me to be the leader of the council. So obviously that was difficult, and I think, it was not an enjoyable experience. Of course it wasn't. And I think it was obviously largely a very political experience from some of the leaders of the other groups.
Has that affected your relationships with them?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all, because I appreciate that, we are in an environment where we operate in a political environment.
Yeah.
No, of course not. As the leader of the council, it's incumbent upon me, and it's really important to me personally, that I build positive relationships with people, because I'm very much a collaborative leader. That's my style. I think we are working quite well together.
Okay. Now, the sudden departure of Caroline Reeves in 2021 left Jan Harwood as heir apparent as council leader under the partnership agreement you had with R4GV. But he then jumped ship to join the Tories, and you stepped forward. Why did you put yourself forward?
At the time I put myself forward because I was the leader of the Liberal Democrat group, so it seemed to make sense that I should step up into that role that was left by Jan.
Why wasn't he leader of that group then?
I think because of the departure of Caroline, which was relatively unexpected earlier that year.
Because it's unusual for the leader of the group not, that wouldn't be also the council leader, but he hadn't got to that stage.
Yeah, I mean, it can be done like that. It just depends on the different groups. But I think with Caroline's departure earlier in the year, I became the leader of the group.
Okay.
But I think Jan had been the deputy leader of the group at the time, and so he just he was the deputy leader of the council, and when he left, it just felt the right thing to do for me to step up into that role.
Okay. Did other people ask you to do that, or was it just solely your decision?
don't remember.
Okay,
to be
fair
honest.
enough. Now, coming back to this year, the Solace report, the Society of Local Authority Chief Executives, their review found that GBC's practices posed a serious risk to residents. And you said that the people of Guildford deserve better, and you offered a heartfelt apology and a commitment to put right the long-standing issues which have been uncovered. And you weren't going to rest until you had a resilient, well-managed council of which we can all be proud. How did it get to that state?
Okay, so the Solace report told us that we were at serious risk of not meeting our duty of best value. And I think in the report, you've seen the report, everybody's seen the report because we've been open and transparent about that. We published it, and we've spoken about that, and we have our improvement plan to make things better. It's clear in the report that some of those things that were identified were, quite deep-rooted and long-standing. They didn't happen overnight.
So why did they happen?
I don't know. I think, successively different administrations who have different ways of working, things just got into the situation that we discovered earlier this year.
Do you think Future Guildford had played a part? Because there were quite significant staffing cuts under Future Guildford, and isn't it the case that if anyone has too much on their plate, they can't do a good job?
I don't doubt that it had some impact, but I don't think it was the only impact. It certainly wasn't. I think, as I said, it's long-standing issues.
And do you think the culture at GBC played a part?
Yes, I think because that's part of the best value, part of best value. The culture has to be positive. The culture has to be open and transparent, and the governance and the financial controls have to be there. And clearly we discovered that wasn't the case, and they needed to be improved.
But it's not the first time. Certainly in the Dragon, I personally criticised the lack of openness at the council. So it shouldn't have, it's not something that should have come as a massive surprise because of the Solace review, should it?
No, and I think the point that's really important in all of this is that I think because we had those concerns, particularly once we were able to have control of all of the portfolios and have a real overview of what was happening, and we commissioned the Solace report earlier this year because we were concerned about what happened in the housing service, and we knew that there were probably concerns and issues that needed to be addressed across the whole of the council. So that's why we did that, and it was really important that we did that because what came out in the report clearly showed that we were right to be concerned, and that's why we're working with officers and through the improvement plan to actually put in place all the improvements that need to happen.
But sometimes the reason for a lack of openness is because people are worried that openness will reveal poor performance, for instance. Do you think that was part of the problem?
I think that, with different people in different administrations, there is a different view of that openness and transparency. I can assure you and residents of the borough that, me as leader and with my administration, we are being open and transparent, and you can see that through the way that we've actually dealt with this situation by commissioning the report, identifying the problems, being open about that, publishing them, talking about them, apologising for them, and making our improvement plan public. And in a few weeks' time, at our next council meeting in December, we'll have the first of the reports back from the independent assurance panel, made up of some of the people that were on the review panel originally from Solace, which will give an indication of how we're doing. And that's a process that's going to continue happening for the next few years.
Okay, so we can look forward to that when did you say?
It's coming to council at the beginning of December.
Okay, thank you. Now, after the Solace report had been published in September, I asked you through the comms team several questions, one of which was that there have been serious failings identified by the regulator for social housing, and one of the things they noticed was that the management of the housing estate, including compliance with fire, asbestos and electrical regulations, was insufficient. Are all council properties now fully compliant, I asked. Now, you failed to answer that question in the written response I got through the comms team. That, although you were also saying that you were still committed to openness, why couldn't you answer that question then?
Just to clarify, so you had a written response
Yes.
from the council,
But it was
that particular
signed by you, but on
my
your
behalf.
name. Yeah.
Okay, but that particular question wasn't answered.
No.
I don't know the answer to that, and I'm sorry that didn't happen. I don't know. I honestly can't answer that.
Do you think you knew then how many were not compliant?
Well, I would imagine that was part of the process to establish that situation, because we'd self-referred. That was the point.
Okay.
We had self-referred to the regulator for social housing, because we knew that even though we were fairly certain that work around compliance had actually been done, we couldn't evidence it with all the necessary certificates and things like that.
But shouldn't you check, frankly, answers that are going out in your name?
Normally, yes, I would. So I don't know if
Okay.
I don't recall it, Martin.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't recall
Okay.
it.
Well, but do you know now how many council properties are not compliant with any of the regulations?
I would have to check exactly for the correct number, but I am certain, having been in part of a meeting with the regulator for social housing fairly recently and seeing all the work that we've been done, that we reported to the regulator for social housing, there are a number of the areas of compliance, things like gas and that kind of thing, where we are 100% compliant. But there are some areas where we are still working towards being 100% compliant and being able to have the certification to be able to demonstrate that and evidence that.
I mean, would you agree that it's important for the council to be exemplary as landlords?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I want to see happening.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, moving on to the finance situation, we seem to have gone away from the risk of bankruptcy. I know it's not strictly called that, but you know what I mean, that you can't make ends meet at the council. Yeah. Nonetheless, there are still serious burdens in terms of finances that the council have to face. Two big areas of borrowing are the Wayside Village and Ash Bridge. Who benefits from those projects, which is costing the council so much in terms of borrowing?
With the Wayside Urban Village project, which is obviously a very complex project, we're moving, our depot to a different part of the site so we can develop that land for council housing. And obviously there'll be market housing as part of the development, and also a new Thames water treatment plant, which will benefit the people of the borough as well.
But isn't all this work necessary to allow the growth of Guildford dictated by central government?
Well, Wayside Urban Village has been a project that's been started 20 years ago, I think more than 20 years ago. So, I mean, that's quite a long time. And it's a brownfield site, and it's a good use of the land, and it's, regenerate a piece of land.
And Ashbridge?
Well, Ashbridge obviously is going to benefit mostly the area of Ash immediately because of the stopping the congestion at the railway station crossing. But equally, it's going to benefit people all across the borough who are, travelling in that area.
Would it have been necessary without all the extra housing that's recently been built in Ash?
Well, I think the traffic there has been an issue for quite a long time, hasn't it? I think that, obviously when there are more homes,
Well, there are plenty of people in Ash who still don't like the bridge, aren't there?
No, and that's fine. There are always people who don't like things,
Okay.
and then there are people who are very glad to see things being done.
Okay. Now, there is increasing urbanisation around Guildford. One of your campaign slogans is you wanted a greener Guildford. Are you happy that the increasing urbanisation still fits into that target of yours?
Well, I think for us as Liberal Democrats, the greener focus is very much around the climate change, sustainability in development, sustainability, biodiversity, of course, all of those things. And also for us at the council, it's about us reducing our carbon emissions to net zero. And there are plenty of other organisations in the borough. Obviously, there's a great deal of work going on at the university. You've got Carbon Zero in the town. Lots of people who are all working towards that end goal, really, of making Guildford a greener place.
So, are you not concerned about the loss of greenbelt that's gone on over the last decade?
I think it's important that any decisions around development take place through the local plan process, which they did. And I appreciate that, the last local plan process, there were people who were not happy with that and did not like that. We are where we are. We've got a local plan that we're now going through the process to update. And there's, there is evidence that has to be brought forward to be able to, go through that process and make those decisions.
Now, one former Lib Dem councillor told me that they regarded the green belt as a noose around Guildford's neck. Do you think that?
I think for me that's quite a dramatic thing to say, actually. I think we're very fortunate in our borough to have some beautiful landscapes, which obviously are protected, part of the AONB and our Thames Basin and Special Protection Heath there, all of those places. We're very fortunate to have a great deal of beautiful green space.
But every time we lose a bit, it's lost forever, isn't it?
Yes, but it's so the important thing is we have protected spaces, and we're very lucky to have those.
Okay, but recently the plan for a solar farm at the university was using partly an area of great landscape value.
Yes, and I think with the government looking at the planning process at the moment and the MPPF. I mean, I'm no planning expert, Martin. You know that, and I know that you've recently interviewed Fiona, who I think has answered a lot of the questions that you're asking me. And as I say, we're going through that process to update the local plan.
I know, but don't you think, as a matter of principle, it's important that we protect those areas as much as the council can, because it's not totally in the council's control?
No, certainly it's not, and I think we need to, with the difficult decisions that are being made through the planning process at the moment, it's about a balance, isn't it?
But in this case, it was borough councillors, a lot of them Lib Dems, that voted for that loss of AGLV land.
But as I said, through the planning process and the rules as they are at the moment, it's very much a balance between the harms outweighing the benefits and vice versa, and that's a matter for the members on the planning committee to determine. Now,
Waverley Council next door have also had a huge increase in their housing target, 94% for them. I think it's similar for Guildford, and their council leader, a fellow Lib Dem, has been quite outspoken. He says the new targets are unrealistic, unachievable, and that the proposed standard method is fundamentally detached from the realities of local constraints. It risks undermining both the environment and community cohesion, and we urgently need a more credible, locally tailored approach. Do you agree with him?
I think, Councillor Follows is obviously very outspoken, and he has his view, and I know that going back to the interview with Fiona, who is our planning expert, she explained what the process is going through the local plan update and the evidence that needs to be gathered, etc. And she mentioned that she and I had both co-signed a letter outlining, the concerns we had around the new housing numbers, which we obviously have sent to the Deputy Leader of the Government.
But there is a large number of people in Guildford Borough who are really worried about the scale of development that's planned for the borough. Don't you think you could be more representative of them by being more vociferous, like Councillor Follows, towards the government?
Well, I think we need to be realistic, and I think Fiona said this at the time, that it is going to be a challenge for us, but the government are in place with a large number of seats. They've set out what it is they want to see happen, and what we have to try to do is to make sure that we're doing the very best for our communities when we're trying to address the issues that we've been, the hand we've been dealt, if you like.
But shouldn't you make it clear that you're not, if this is your view, that you're not happy with the increased targets?
I think we've set that out. We've set out in our letter our concerns around the increased housing targets, of course. And you've mentioned rightly that there are people who are concerned about the development, but equally there are people who welcome development, people who welcome having a home to live in and a community in which to contribute and be part of. So I think you know, we work within the constraints that we have, and we have to listen to everybody's views. Of course we do, but we still have a very difficult, you know, balance to
So how would you assess the feeling in Guildford Borough then? Do you think, how many people do you think are happy with the increased housing targets as a percentage?
I don't know, Martin.
But isn't it important to get a feel for that if you're representing them?
Well, I think we, you know, with the conversations we have on the doorsteps, we hear people and we listen to people. But I think
But you're not getting on the doorstep in Horsley and Clarendon, are you?
Oh, I'm not, but certainly colleagues are.
Right, and I'm sure, what is the feedback they're getting there? I bet it's not that they're in favour of
To
the
be
increase
honest,
of
I
rent.
haven't had those conversations with people.
No, but you might, with who? I mean, you
Well, I'm
presumably
not
your
hearing.
colleagues
I'm
are
not. No,
feeding
I'm not
back to you.
hearing that. I'm not hearing that from them.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean it's not happening.
Right.
But it's. We're going down a bit of a rabbit hole here, aren't we?
Well, I'm just. Well, my point is, I think it's important you have a good sense of what people feel in the borough, so that you can represent their view.
I think clearly we had a very good sense in 2019 what people's view was. Things are different now.
Okay, but in 2019, the Conservatives, the authors of the local plan, were ejected.
Yes, because people didn't like that local
No.
plan, and now we're going through another process to update the local plan. And as part of that process, of course, our community will have the opportunity, as they did before, to put forward their views on it.
Okay. Now, finally, you're a county councillor as well as the leader of Guildford Borough Council, where you're also the lead councillor for housing. The three roles would stretch anyone. Will you be standing still in the county council elections in May?
I think in the past few years, with the extra responsibilities I've taken on at the council and the challenges and the stress and the difficulties through that particular period, it has been an enormous task. I think now we are moving into a much more positive place. Obviously, the council has published its corporate strategy and our vision for Guildford for the next 10 years. And we're going into a much more positive phase where we're going to be engaging with the community a lot more and our stakeholders about how we actually reach the outcomes we've set for the community of, you know, to become a greener, fairer, thriving Guildford, and with our strategic priorities around making Guildford more sustainable, more prosperous, more inclusive, where people can have a home that they can afford and where we can have a, you know, resilient and well-managed council. So now that we're moving into that more positive phase, and I think things are a lot better at the council and not as stressful, then yes, I certainly hope I will be standing at the council elections next May.
Councillor Julie McShane, thank you very much.